I wonder if you could show us the behind the scenes of the planning in how you launch emerging tech.
I think we just like threw up every industry on the wall and tried to like get a Venn diagram of like crappy existing media, like advertiser appetite, consumer appetite, and like a couple other variables and just like shoved them together and see which sort of industry made sense there. And so I think we landed on emerging tech. Obviously, it's not the only one where that fits that description, but I think that's pretty much the strategy behind it. So then we looked for a writer and we found one in Ryan Duffy who was very similar to me and like didn't have a lot of writing experience, but was just willing to work hard and loved the subject matter and was willing to just like dive deep as possible and be a part of something that was truly experimental. So then we devised this launch plan. We wrote a bunch of fake newsletters. That's something we still do when like hiring new writers or launching a new product is we just like send it a bunch. We just like practice it and get in the flow of it by writing a couple of fake newsletters and don't send it out to anyone and see what the process is like and work out the kinks. It's like preseason sports. And then we devise like a big promotional plan. And it used to be when we launched Emerging Tech, the promotion plan was put at the top of the newsletter every day and just like promote it. But now we have platforms across social media and newsletters and podcasts. So our promotion plans are definitely a little more sophisticated than just like, let's say we're launching a newsletter at the top of our main newsletter every day.
Which channel garners the greatest attention now since you're everywhere?
I don't know. You could look at the numbers of followers on any particular platform and that might give you your answer, but it's hard to say because everyone's sort of like their own type of person. So like I am on Twitter all the time. So I think Morning Brew's Twitter like has a outsized influence on my life and other people's life just because that's where I'm on and other people are probably on Instagram way more than I am. So they'll see Morning Brew there and we have I would say like a comparable amount of followers and we've also built up a TikTok channel. So if you're the type of person who likes to consume stuff on TikTok, then you'll probably feel like Morning Brew has an outsized influence on your life. Or if you're like a podcast person listening to Founders Journal or the other podcasts, then that's maybe where you find Morning Brew. So I don't know if I can like quantify where we think Morning Brew has, its biggest platform outside of the daily newsletter. I like to think it's probably social media and will continue to grow because we're just hiring a lot on that front and we're investing a lot of resources into YouTube and video and TikTok and social media and building out more handles. We think that's like a really big growth avenue for us. So I'm hoping that it will be social media and the newsletter will be this like nice little trophy on the side and it'll just keep chugging and we'll see what happens.
Twitter was the next thing I wanted to bring up because you have quite a substantial following there. The Alex, Austin, they have very substantial followings as well. How important is it to have these kind of followings and presence on Twitter for newsletter writers and podcasters?
I think it's important, but it's not necessarily the be all end all. I think people use it for various things, and Alex and Austin have used it really well to create connections with other people. And for me, I've like watched it happen. I haven't like done so much myself or poured a lot of resources into it. But when we launch something new, or we need to recruit somebody, or we need to find somebody, Alex or Austin can just kind of tweet it out to 300 or however many 100,000 of people follow them. Like that is a really powerful tool. So I found that it can be really helpful for a company to have a big presence on social media if they want, or especially Twitter, if they want to like network. It's amazing for networking and recruiting. It's super helpful, especially in this day and age where it's really hard to find workers. To say that you're hiring somebody or you're hiring for a position and you have this massive network of people that can recommend people and vouch for you. And I just see way more people being hired from their presence on social media or Twitter than applying in cold. So I think it can be used for in various strategic ways other than just like pumping yourself up. And also it's important for distribution, like for our content. I think if I had a bigger social media following and I have like a relatively small one for compared to other Morning Brew people, like if I wrote something or one of my writers wrote something, I'd be able to distribute it and have people read it and people would see it more rather than just reading it in the newsletter. So I think it seems important to me, but like in moderation. I've seen a lot of people go like off the deep end in social media. It's just a little cringy and I don't like it. So it's not for me anyway.
Do you have any advice for the best way to use Twitter without going off the deep end, but still getting attention?
It seems to me like you need to have your area of expertise, right? Like people don't really care about what you ate for dinner or like your little jokes about something. Like the best Twitter accounts, I think, are very consistent in the type of content they produce and in the format. So you know what you're going to get from Alex Lieberman, you know what you're going to get from anyone else who's super successful. And I think it's only like the celebrities that can use it, like Facebook, where they're just like, here's what I'm doing today. I don't think that's really the right tack. Like you should lean into whatever you're an expert at and use that, and just do that over and over again, and people will go back to your account to notice you and like learn from you. So you need to provide value. I think I don't do that. So that's why I'm not particularly successful. So I'm not taking my own advice, but there isn't just like one thing that I'm obsessed about. I guess I could like tweet about emailing and newsletters all day, but I don't really want to do that. But I do find that the people who are super successful are just like, let me be this one type of person and that's fine on Twitter.
Are there particular people, since you spend so much time on Twitter, that you really enjoy following and you would recommend?
I'll have to think about it, but I like Joe Weisenthal for economic stuff. He's a Bloomberg guy. And then there's just like a variety of other comedians that I follow. I think it's just a great opportunity for like one-liners and jokes and making fun of culture. So I don't know their names off the top of my head, but it's a mix of like CNBC pundits, Bloomberg pundits, sports people, and random comedians who just make me laugh. So it's just like a really smashed together thing that is pretty delightful.
It sounds very much like the tone you find in Morning Brew newsletters as well.
Yeah, totally. It's all just like, yeah, everything mashed together from what's happening in the world to things that are funny to cultural moments and sports. But you have to remember that it's still a bubble. Like most people are not on Twitter. Twitter has 200 million or so users, and like Instagram has over a billion. So when you're getting angry about something on Twitter, you just have to realize that 90% of people have no idea what you're talking about and don't care. So that's very important. I think the news media really needs to take a little more caution with writing about things that only they care about. And there's a discussion on Twitter and realize that like the average person doesn't care and it doesn't apply to their life.
Do you have any checks and balances to ensure you don't fall into that hole and you try to give as holistic a view as possible?
Not really any checks and balances. It's like what I just articulated. It's something that I think about often. So what's great is we have writers from a wide variety of perspectives. And so it's not just me writing the newsletter. We have three other people who write the bulk of it, and I'm just the editor. And everyone comes from a variety of backgrounds and upbringings. And so I think us just talking about stories together provides a natural checks and balance about like what we should be writing about, because if I was just writing the newsletter, there would be like way more sports, like stuff I'm more interested in. And then it's nice to have someone else or a bunch of other people being like, well, this is really interesting to me. And I would be like, well, I had no idea. That's cool. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who find that super interesting. So I'm glad you brought that up. And so if everyone just brings their own sort of interests and things they find really interesting to bear in the middle, then we can like craft a pretty good newsletter that captures hopefully most people's interests.
So as you have alluded, your role has changed. You were first a writer, then August 2018, you were managing editor. How does that role evolve for you, your time at Morning Brew? What do you do now?
It's different in the sense that I'm managing people and I'm assigning stories and editing them as opposed to completely writing them, and have one-on-ones with people and I'm trying to help them develop. So it's more of like a coach kind of thing. Whereas in the early days, I was merely a player. It's been an interesting thing. Like everyone talks about being a manager is very different than being a regular employee, and you have to put others' interests first and like prepare for meetings and lead meetings. It's just a completely different job than what you're trained to do. But it's been a great challenge, and I still find ways to write every day. So that's sort of like the same. It's different in that like I'm managing a group of writers. They're all sending jokes and I kind of have to pick the best one because no one else is going to decide. But at the end of the day, like every afternoon we're still writing the newsletter. And so that is part of my job that just hasn't changed. And I hope will never change. Another part that's changed is like in the early days, we didn't have any other projects. We would be like, okay, let's write the newsletter. Let's write the newsletter. Let's write the newsletter. Now it's like, what are we doing 6 months from now? What are we going to do for Earth Day next year? What are we going to do for the Olympics in 3 months? What's our travel thing going to be like for Memorial Day 2022? And so thinking about those longer run projects is definitely a bigger part of the job than it used to be when we were just like on the hamster wheel doing the day to day.
What have you found to be the most helpful in creating that close-knit Morning Brew culture? Because in 2018, you had 25 staff. Then recently, you've had over 100 staff. And I heard Alex say that before you knew everybody and everyone had their first name as an email, but now that's no longer possible.
Yeah.
It's really a huge change.
It is a big change, and I think it's tough for every company out there, and I'm sure there's a million blog posts about, like, how you can create a culture at a remote company. We're not fully remote. We don't plan to be fully remote. We plan to bring back an office, but for right now, we are all fully remote. So, I think it's just a credit to our people operations team led by Kate Noel, who has been just an incredible person in, like, creating community and creating activities for people to do and feel part of the company, even if they live in Montana and opened up a laptop and now work at Morning Brew, which is very different than when they came into the office in New York City in the early days. It's just so different feeling like you're a part of something. So I give full credits to that team for creating like super engaging activities and putting in different mechanisms in place to make people feel like they're a part of a community and the company, even if they're just in another time zone or international or things like that. So I'm excited to get back to the office though. I think there's no replacement for that.
I wanted to jump back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that it was only a couple of years ago you felt that you had created a great product that you were happy with. I wonder if you could share a bit more about that moment and what it was about that newsletter you were creating that you felt was great and was finally what you wanted it to be.
I just think that in the early days, I didn't know much about business. So I was not necessarily providing a lot of analysis. I was kind of just saying what happened and regurgitating what other people were drawing their own conclusions from. So it was really nice. I felt like I've read enough about this subject to at least have my own opinions and analysis. That was like a big breakthrough moment for me where I was like, I've read all about this and like I think I know what you should take away instead of like what some other writer wants you to take away. And I think we've developed a style of humor that felt good. It was not like condescending or punching down or anything like that. Like it was uplifting and clever and not corny. And I think that also took a lot of time to develop because I think just when you think millennial newsletters, you're like, you probably think super cringy jokes and things like that. I think maybe in the early days we were doing that. And I think when I felt good in the later years was that we were more subtle about it. So it didn't like break up the flow of the newsletter. And then the design really became much better. I don't think it was very pretty to look at in the early days. So it wasn't just the writing, but the design ended up looking really good. We created good new sections and it just wasn't taking me as long to write it. So I think that's the biggest indication where I was like, all right, I'm in the flow now.
Yeah, I definitely remember I was reading for quite a while and suddenly one day I opened it and it was full of rainbow colors and I thought, oh, it's gone through a big rebranding.
Yeah, we tried a bunch of things. Some things have not worked out and people let us know and we've changed it back. Like the market section a few months ago, that graphic we changed and it turned out to be a disaster. We just try things and people let us know if they like them or not. And if enough people don't like them, we change it back. But that's seems to be the minority. Yeah, I figured out what I want for like the trivia and the game section. We've built that up a lot, but overall it just felt really good. And like I said, I think the fact that it wasn't taking me till 1 a.m. was a pretty good indication.
Do you think about how to stay relevant? I mean, you're sort of a disrupting factor compared to the incumbents. And a couple of years later, there'll probably be a new upstart that's coming to try and disrupt Morning Brew, who is part of the incumbents. So how do you think about that?
It's definitely on my mind right now. It feels like every other day there's another newsletter that's launching and doing this exact thing that we do. And since we are sort of the incumbent at this point, people are like nasty to us online. So that's been new. And like now it's like, let's take down Morning Brew. Like that's kind of the sentiment. I don't know if it's like a big sentiment, but I obviously something that I pick up on. Maybe other people haven't. So yeah, it's something that's really on my mind. I haven't figured out a game plan yet. I don't think we're not relevant, but you always do need to stay one step ahead of the curve and see where people are going. So I don't have like an action plan yet. And I don't think we need to like scramble to do anything, but it's definitely something that's on my mind that there's like very much increased competition in the email space for doing exactly what we're doing. And then there's also competition from social media people and there's like single creators that have a lot of audience that are also putting out news recaps. So yeah, it's something that's definitely on my mind. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do about it or if we have to do anything about it, but I'm definitely just like keeping tabs on the new landscape, which is more emails, videos, TikTok, people doing news recaps. Like if people start consuming more of their news on podcasts or TikTok or whatever it is, like we have to be there. So we'll keep tabs.
Is staff a sort of concern? I mean, you have people like Casey Newton who has his own newsletter, and with say BuzzFeed, they create all these super media stars who then come out and launch their own media empires because they've already collected all the necessary skills and the attention as well. I wonder if that's something that you would be concerned about, that you lose great staff who want to create something that might be a competitor.
Yeah, I think early in the pandemic, everyone was starting their own Substack and everyone thought they could be their own media company. And I think we're sort of seeing a little bit of a backlash to that now. And a lot of those people who started out on their own are maybe re-signing with publishers like The Atlantic or whatever it is. And I think we're seeing that it's not super sustainable for the vast majority of writers to be your own media company. As you can see for me, like it's a grind and I was only in the right circumstance. I have so much support. I have a copy editor. We have 3 other writers and we do this newsletter. So I can't imagine one person trying to do this all themselves. You know, eventually they'll probably hire an editor, hire a legal team, hire a design team, and then you just basically have another media company. So at first I was a little concerned, like you were just mentioning, where it's like, oh, everyone can just start their newsletter. And they have such big audiences. And then now I'm sort of realizing, well, I have 60 people on the sales team who are like selling this thing. Like, are you kidding me? And we have so much support. I have like a couple managers above me who are so supportive and help me. And so I just don't see how someone can do this day in, day out and not burn out with a huge support system, which is basically what a media company provides. So I think you're starting to see the pendulum swing back away from the single creator company, though I'm sure some people can do it. It just doesn't seem like sustainable. So I'm not terribly concerned. I mean, some people might try to do that from Morning Brew, but hopefully they'll see the value in what a media company provides. And like you can take a day off and someone can fill in for you. Pretty cool.
And how do you feel when COVID first hit? Like when you first hear about it, and when do you realize that this was something that would impact you and Morning Brew?
I will have to say I was pretty like dismissive early. I was like, did not think it would be a thing. I had never lived through anything like this before. I actually have a text with a friend where he was like, this is going to be bad. And I was like, nah, don't worry about it, man. Just like continue your life. Yeah, I had no idea what I was talking about. And so it was all pretty abrupt. I think I suffered or like I went through the same things as many people being like, what is going on? But then what was great or what was great and was great. News was so intense during March and April and changing every day. And like the unemployment rate went up to 14% and the economy was collapsing and markets were going crazy. So I'm glad I had work that was distracting me from everything and also immersing me in literally everything. And so I was just working. We all went home like in early March and I was just working in New York while the sirens were going around, just like writing the newsletter every day, trying to figure out what was going on, trying to strike the right tone. And then once like the dust settled, like figuring out how we could capitalize as a company because a lot more people were reading the news and wanting more things to do and just didn't know what was happening. So I think Morning Brew was like in a good position to help there.
How did the idea of the essentials come about?
Yes, that's kind of what I was just talking about. It was like March and I had nothing to do, like besides work. And I don't think anybody did. Like all of your social things, all of your travel plans were gone, all of your social events were gone. You were just like sitting at home. So at the bottom of the newsletter every day, I started to do this like daily planner thing, which was like a workout, a TV show recommendation, like a way to level up, just here's like your calendar was wiped out. Here, let us help you like maybe figure out what to do with your life. So we started doing that for a month and each of the writers took turns writing it. And it seemed like it was a huge hit. It was like the most popular part of the newsletter. So then Jenny on our team decided, why don't we just make it its own newsletter called The Essentials? And we did that. So that went for a few months. And then we turned that into Sidekick, which is like a more permanent lifestyle newsletter. That's a pretty cool example of something just being created out of thin air based on need.
And recently as well, Morning Brew was recently sold to Business Insider for a reported $75 million. How has that impacted what you do at Morning Brew?
It really hasn't impacted me at all. Honestly, I don't have any contact with Business Insider. I think the CEO, Henry Blodgett, retweets me sometimes, which is cool. So that's been the only thing. I'm sure there's other relationships going on with the growth team and trying to figure out ways we can leverage all our platforms. But at least from my perspective, absolutely nothing has changed since the sale from an editorial perspective.
Since this is a podcast, I feel we cannot talk about your own podcast. So there's Founders Journal. There's also Business Casual podcast, which you've appeared in as well. How did the idea of having your own podcast start? And how did Alex's pet project become a part of Morning Brew?
I guess I'll start with Alex's thing. I've been on very few podcasts with Morning Brew. I think they just tap me in for whenever, like the end of the year episode, I'll appear in because I've just been writing newsletters for the entire year. So I kind of have a decent sense of what happened and can help people recap or like think about what happened this year and what we can think about next year. So I've gone on their podcast a few times and I will again in a few days. Alex's thing is, I don't know, he's just like a machine. He's a freaking machine. Like, he started Morning Brew out of need for his friends, and I don't know exactly how Founders Journal started, but he wanted to journal, and so he just started making these voice memos, and then, it's turned out to be valuable to other people, and I think it's just a great example of don't force it. Do what you were gonna do, and if other people find value, then, like, lean into it, and so he is just amazing, yeah, like, he's created 2 amazing products now, and I think it's like number 8 on business in iTunes or Apple Podcasts.
It's very
So
binge worthy. I was shocked.
yeah, it's super binge worthy. It's like
Yeah.
super valuable. Like there's no fluff. Every episode will help you and they're like 10 minutes long. So, I think it's the right size and right timing. And so I'm just excited to see where he takes it from here. Like now he has a lot of support with like producer and a bigger audio team. And he's done photo shoots with like a leather jacket and like all that stuff. So I'm just a cheerleader. So I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Yeah. What I love is during my research is realizing how people at Morning Brew are so open about how and what you do. Like with Founders Journal, Alex is very open. How you develop the tech part of it. Your former colleague was very open about it as well. I wonder what your thoughts are just about this whole building in public movement.
I think it's fine. I'm not like drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't think you need to do it. Like I said earlier, I think building in public, it gives you an opening to hire people and make yourself more visible and like creates a brand around your company. I've seen it go the other way where people build in public and they're like crash and burn at the end and they're like beating their chest and like we're changing the world and blah 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 and they say everything they do. I hate that. Like I'm more of like just do your job and like people will come and do everything. So if like you're being all bravado on social media and you don't like follow through, that is a terrible look. So I would never do that. So you shouldn't brag in public, but I've seen for at least a bunch of people in Morning Brew, it's been so helpful in so many ways of like finding guests for podcasts or making connections or finding advertisers when we're in a pinch. So I would say if it works for you, do it.
How do you find that line between building public and not bragging in public? Isn't that a bit of a fine line?
Yeah, it is a fine line. I think it's maybe the tone with which you take. If you're just like humble about it, you don't do it that often maybe, and like you're very strategic about it. Like you only say something when you hit like an actual milestone that means something and you give credit to other people instead of yourself. I think there's just like more tactful ways to do it. But I think like communicating that Morning Brew hit like 300,000 Twitter followers or like we hit a certain number of subscriber numbers or we hired a bunch of people. I think those are moments to capitalize. And I think that is really important for someone to be like, oh my God, Morning Brew, like they're hiring a lot of people. I'm really smart, but like maybe for my next job, I'll work there. Like it seems like they're doing really well. And so I think that can be very useful for a company. Just don't do it all that much because people just get annoyed with it. I think that's just communication.
And what is one thing that you should be doing and aren't, and why?
Well, I think I could be a better teacher to other writers. It's just a different mindset. And over the course of my career, I've just been like, write this, write this, write this, write this. And now I'm an editor and I do a lot of editing of people. So I'm giving feedback like hours a day on people's writing, like on the nose feedback, like this doesn't work, this isn't funny, like really intense feedback. And so like it's very in the moment. I think I could do a much better job of talking with people and being like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And like, let's help you get there, and take more time to do more workshops, and being like, let's just do more professional development in journalism. And like I've asked around the industry and it doesn't seem like that's something that's done at all. It's just you go to school and then you're off to the races and like write, report, learn from people organically. But it seems to me like we should have a little more structure around it. So that's something that I hope to do next year.
Actually, next year, speaking of education, Morning Brew has started to enter into the education space. So we should talk about that. Can you share a bit?
I think what they're doing is awesome. I've done this a while where you can kind of get a sense for things that like are catching on and have momentum as we talked about. And the MBA that Morning Brew is doing, which is an 8-week virtual program to help you level up your career. It's you can just tell like the people who've done it have loved it. They post That's another great part about building in public because they post on social media and the alumni post on social media. And like that is a great signaling for anybody else who sees this and they're like, well, this person really loved it. Like maybe I'll sign up. And so that whole team, I just really love them. And they're so hardworking and humble and fun. And I just see great things. Like I'm not an expert on the online education space. I don't necessarily know where it's going, but clearly like people have found the program really valuable. And so I'm excited to see what happens. And I'd love to just be a part of it and help them grow.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole MBA actually arose out of that period, March of April 2020, when the co-founders actually thought there would be no Morning Brew, and they were trying to think of all kinds of ways to keep this thing going.
I have not heard that story. I think education was always like part of the game plan because of who our audience was, like young professionals who wanted to get better. And so we always were thinking about like maybe an educational product would be good. We know that like career and professional content does really well with our readers. Like if we say how to schedule better meetings or like here's why you're having Zoom fatigue and all of that, like our readers eat that up. So I think it's just a natural extension to do like our own educational thing and professional networking things. So am not smart enough to create that out of thin air, but we've hired a couple people and they literally created this thing that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
And that's so impressive.
And before I wrap up with the final questions, one final thing. What would get you to subscribe to a newsletter or a podcast like this? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a unique voice, like someone I can learn from and who's smarter than me. I don't think I need like another roundup. So I subscribe to several that where like the writing is exceptional and like makes me laugh every time. I don't listen to many podcasts, honestly. I listen to like one or two. And the one I listen to is Conversations with Tyler Cowen. I only listen to that because like he's a genius and knows everything about everything. And so I'm just like being in the room and hearing smart conversations with him. And that's like one thing that gets me to subscribe. And there's so many podcasts of really great things. And like I'm sure if I just tried it out, I would find something similar. But I don't know. I don't have a commute anymore. There's not like a ton of time that I listen to podcasts. So I like that one. I'm just gonna stick with it. And then I have my rotation of newsletters that I really like too. So my media diet's a little set, but I'd like to keep continuing expanding it.
Are there particular newsletters that you wouldn't mind recommending?
There's a couple in the afternoon that I really like. There's Garbage Day by Ryan Broderick, who talks about internet culture. And he just surfaces things from like the depths of Tumblr and things that I've just never even heard about. So it's really funny to see what's going on. And I would say like he's one of the foremost experts on like on internet culture. I like Today in Tabs, which is like a really fun internet roundup. And he's just like an amazing writer. What else is there? And then everything else I just read, like the regular New York Times, Bloomberg, Axios, like if there's a newsletter, I'll read it. So I have like a separate newsletter tab that I just go through every day. There's also a really good one for like engineering called The Prepared. And it has to do with like engineering and design and things like that. And they all have some really cool links to various things.
Well, I haven't heard any of this, so thank you for the recommendation.
Well, I mean, maybe they're not for everybody, but I like them.
Well, thank you so much, Neal, for your time. I love to wrap up all my interviews with these questions. So the first one is this: do you feel like you have found your why?
I think so. which is a little scary to say, right? But like I said before, I don't feel like I go to work every day. It's just really I really feel like I'm in the sweet spot where the things I'm doing every day are the things that like make me happy. And so yeah, like everyone always asks like, what are you doing next? What are you doing next? I'm like, well, if I could do this for the rest of my life, like I'd be pretty happy. It's like jobs are tough and people do a lot of things they don't want for jobs. And if you asked me like 10 years ago if I would be writing like a funny digest for people about the news and that would be my job, I would be like, let's go. Don't take that. Don't do anything else. So that seems to be the case. So we'll see. Maybe my answer will change in 5 years. And obviously, I don't want to just like do the same thing for my life and not do anything else. But for right now, I feel very content.
And what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I was thinking about this, and I would like to be known as a person who helped like launch the careers of a bunch of other younger writers. That would make me feel really good. Unlike me, I think a lot of people come into Morning Brew with like their why isn't writing newsletters, right? Like they're maybe a video person or they're like a social media person or a marketing person, yet they get put into like writing the newsletter. And so I want them, which I think is like an amazing experience. So I would love to like have people write the newsletter for a while and then go off and do like their real passion is and what they're like the most good at. So I would love to be known as like all 20 of these writers who started at Morning Brew are now like insanely successful and like they all got their start in the industry by writing with Neal at Morning Brew for the newsletter for like a year and then became this like amazing person afterwards or amazing like professional and whatever they're doing. So I would really like that. So I'm trying to figure out ways to like maybe more codify that or create more of like a fellowship program where we can like really get young up and coming talent into Morning Brew and like have them write the newsletter for a while. And then it's like you can try out a bunch of different stuff. Here's what you're really good at. Maybe you are like a professional, maybe you are like a newsletter writer. Like let's get you your own newsletter, whatever it is. So that I think would be a really cool legacy to have.
So tagging onto that, what would it take to get you to hire someone as a writer?
I think writing is the most important thing because for me, it's like the ability to really write something that makes people like spit out their coffee or take a screenshot of something and post on social media. Like, I think that's what's going to make us stand out because we're not writing that much different content. We're covering the same stories. If Jack Dorsey steps down his Twitter, everyone's going to write about it, you know? So we're not like breaking any news here. So it's just like what will make people read Morning Brew's Jack Dorsey story than another person's Jack Dorsey story. And so I think it's like really having writers that can think of something that no one else has ever thought of before. That one headline that makes people go like, that is so funny. And obviously being like smart and understanding business. And well, I don't even think they need to understand business at the outset because I know I didn't and I got here. So it's just the ability to be curious. And it's like, all right, maybe I don't know enough about this, but in 1 to 2 years, I'll be an expert. So it's a combination of, I'd say first and foremost, it's like copy and then next, it's like you have to be super curious about the news. You have to love reading the news. Even if you don't love business news, you have to be willing to like just dive in and learn everything there is about it. And then also just all of the other like personality stuff, like be a team player, be humble, like give feedback and be receptive to feedback and all of that stuff.
And what do you think are the most important qualities of a successful person?
Be successful in your career, that's like everyone can debate what successful means, obviously. That means that you've accomplished your goals, whatever they are. If you want to found a startup and you've done that, then you're successful. If you just want to like use your job as a means to an end to be with your family and just like work the minimum amount of hours for the maximum amount of pay, then like that's awesome. I know a bunch of people like that. That's fantastic. They work remotely, they open up their laptop, they do their work. Over the course of the day, they do their other hobbies and then they close their laptop, be with their family and enjoy what they do. So like who am I to say that that's worse or better than anything else? So I would say yeah, if it's like you set out your goals that you meant to accomplish and like you're disciplined and work hard enough to accomplish them, then I would say you're successful.
And where can people go to connect with you, find out what you're doing, and sign up for Morning Brew if they haven't already?
Yeah. So if you haven't signed up for Morning Brew, you can just go to morningbrew.com and they should use your referral code, obviously. You
Oh, adding in the show notes.
can-
Help me get my sticker.
yeah, you got to get your stickers, even though you seem to not care about
Yeah.
stickers.
I'm interested in the work from home thing, but that's 1,000.
I know. Depends on how many people listen to this and then sign up. We could get you close. And then I'm on Twitter, obviously, where I don't brag in public and I don't necessarily have an expert beat, but you can follow me there or you can just email me at neal@morningbrew.com.
That's the thing that I want to bring up. So you share your email very openly. Alex also shares his email very openly. Is there a thought behind that? Because some people are very secretive about it. Some share it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not famous, so not many people just email me out of the blue. So it's not like I have a deluge. People don't necessarily take me up on this offer all the time. But I would say if I'm like buried under emails all day, I probably wouldn't share it maybe, but like it's not, I can respond to emails. Like I can always carve out time to do that. And that's like some of the most rewarding part of my job. So I don't have to stay up till 3 a.m. every day answering emails. So I'm just like, why not? If someone wants to email me, that's fine.
Yeah, main takeaway, you can email Neil now and he'll respond.
And now I'm gonna be like, I'm never doing this again.